Nobody wanted them. The entire galaxy looked at them and said the same thing. Defective. Broken. Worthless. An entire batch of living, breathing beings, labeled like damaged goods and sold for almost nothing. Every powerful empire passed. Every rich alien buyer turned away. Every advanced civilization in the known galaxy decided these creatures were not worth a single credit. But one buyer stayed. One human, alone, in a room full of the most powerful beings in the universe. And that human saw something nobody else could see. What happened next didn't just shock the auction house. It didn't just shock the galaxy. It rewrote every single rule about what power really means, what truth really looks like, and who really gets to decide what is broken and what is not. Today, you are going to find out the full story. Let me show you exactly how this happened. The station was called Vorith Prime. It floated at the edge of 3 star systems, right in the middle of the most traveled trade route in the known galaxy. Ships from 50 different civilizations passed through it every single day. Merchants, warlords, diplomats, collectors. If something had value anywhere in the universe, it passed through Vorith Prime first. And today, Vorith Prime was hosting something special. The Rith Kai auction. The Rith Kai were the oldest trading house in the galaxy. They had been running auctions for over 4,000 years. They had sold planets. They had sold entire fleets of warships. They had sold ancient artifacts from civilizations that no longer existed. If the Rith Kai were selling something, the entire galaxy paid attention. But this auction was different. This auction was quiet. There were no grand announcements. No glowing advertisements spinning through the star lanes. No famous collectors arriving in private ships. The usual crowd of powerful buyers was mostly absent. A few had sent representatives. Most had not bothered at all. Because this auction was for the defective batch. That was what everyone called them. The defective batch. 37 living beings from a species called the Valen. The Valen were not well known. They came from a small cluster of worlds near the outer rim. They were humanoid in shape, slightly taller than a human, with pale silver skin and large dark eyes that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Under normal circumstances, a healthy Valen was worth a great deal. They were known for their intelligence. Their memory was almost perfect. They could learn a new language in 3 days. They could calculate complex mathematics in their heads faster than most computers. Advanced civilizations used them as advisors, as navigators, as scientists. But these 37 were not healthy. According to the Rith Kai's official assessment, every single one of them had failed the standard evaluation tests. Their response times were too slow. Their language processing scores were far below average. Several of them had failed to respond to basic commands at all. A few had simply sat in the corner of their evaluation chambers and stared at the wall. The official report used the word defective 14 times. And so the galaxy moved on. The powerful buyers didn't even bother coming in person. A few sent low-level representatives just to observe. Some came out of habit. The way people attend auctions, they have no intention of buying from. No serious bids were expected. The Rith Kai's own staff privately expected the entire batch to be quietly removed and recycled into labor pools on some distant mining station. That was the plan, until the human walked inches. His name was Marcus Hale. He was 34 years old. He was originally from a small city in northern England, a place called Durham. He had no title. He had no fleet. He had no empire behind him. By galactic standards, he was no one. Humans had only been part of the galactic community for 60 years. Most alien civilizations still considered them minor species. Interesting, perhaps, occasionally useful, but minors. Marcus worked as an independent acquisitions consultant. That was the polite term. In simpler words, he found things other people had overlooked and figured out if they were worth anything. He had been doing it for 11 years. He was good at it. Not famous. Not rich. Just good. He had heard about the Rithkai auction through a contact on Vorith Prime. A small mention in a trade bulletin. 37 Valen. Defective batch. Reserve price almost nothing. Most people had scrolled past it. Marcus had stopped. He read the official assessment report 3 times. Then he read it again. Something about it bothered him. He couldn't explain it at first. It was like a sound you couldn't quite hear, sitting right at the edge of your awareness, just loud enough to make you turn your head. He booked passage to Vorith Prime that same evening. He sat in the back of the auction hall now, alone, surrounded by empty seats and a handful of bored alien representatives checking their communicators. He looked at the 37 Valen in their transparent holding chambers at the front of the hall. They looked back at him, and Marcus Hale felt the hair on the back of his neck stand up. The auction started at the 9th hour. Station time. The Rithkai auctioneer was a tall Druvian with 4 arms and a voice like grinding stone. He ran through the standard opening protocol with the tone of someone doing paperwork. No excitement. No showmanship. Just procedure. The 37 Valen were presented as a single lot. Lot number 44. The auctioneer read the official assessment out loud. Failed evaluation. Below standard performance. Defective classification, confirmed by 3 independent examiners. The reserve price was set at 200 standard credits. The kind of money you might spend on a decent meal. The representatives in the room barely looked up. Marcus watched the Valen the entire time. He had been watching them since he arrived. He had stood outside their holding area for 2 full hours before the auction began. Just watching. The Rithkai staff had found it strange. One of them had asked if he needed assistance. He had smiled and said no thank you and gone back to watching. Here is what he had noticed. The Valen were not staring blankly. They were watching too. Their large dark eyes moved carefully, systematically, from face to face. They were studying everyone in the room. Every alien representative. Every staff member. Every camera and sensor mounted on the walls. They were doing it quietly, without drawing attention, without making it obvious. Marcus had almost missed it himself. The evaluation report said their response times were too slow. It said they failed to follow basic commands. It said several of them refused to interact with the examiners at all. But Marcus had spent 11 years finding value in things other people dismissed. And he had learned one rule above all others. When something smart appears stupid, you better figure out why before you walk away. He placed the first bid. 250 credits. A few of the representatives looked over at him. Curious, slightly amused. The Druvian auctioneer acknowledged the bid without expression. No one countered. Marcus raised his own bid. 300 credits. Still nothing. The representatives went back to their communicators. One of them actually laughed quietly. A human, bidding on defective stock. Typical. Minor species doing minor things. Marcus went to 500. The auctioneer gave the room one last chance. Silence. The gavel came down. Marcus Hale, independent acquisitions consultant from Durham, England, had just purchased 37 allegedly defective Valen for 520 credits. He stood up and walked to the processing desk to complete the paperwork. The Rithkai processing clerk, a small Fenari with orange fur and tired eyes, looked at him with something between pity and confusion. You understand these units are sold without warranty, she said. No returns. No exchanges. The defective classification is final and binding. I understand, Marcus said. Their evaluation scores were the lowest we have recorded in 40 years of Valen sales. I know. May I ask, she said, lowering her voice slightly, what you intend to do with them? Marcus picked up his paperwork and looked back at the 37 Valen in their chambers. All 37 of them were looking directly at him. Not at the auctioneer. Not at the door. Not at each other. At him. I intend, Marcus said quietly, to find out what they're actually doing. He completed the transfer. He arranged temporary housing units on the station. He moved the Valen out of the auction holding area and into a clean, open common space with food, water, and no evaluation equipment. No tests. No commands. No observers. He sat down across from them and waited. For a long time, nothing happened. Then one of them, the one with the darkest eyes, stood up slowly and walked toward him. She stopped 2 feet away. She studied his face the way you study, problem you have been thinking about for a very long time. Then she spoke. You noticed, she said. Her basic was perfect. Not slow. Not broken. Perfect. Her name was Seva. She was the oldest of the 37. Not by much. But she had been the one they listened to. Marcus could see that immediately. When she moved, the others tracked her. When she spoke, the room went completely still. How long have you been able to speak basic? Marcus asked. Since the 3rd day of evaluation, Seva said. All of us can. Marcus sat with that for a moment. The evaluation had lasted 30 days. They had spoken perfectly on day 3, and then hidden it for 27 more days. Why, he asked. Seva tilted her head. It was a very human gesture, which Marcus noted immediately. Because we needed to know who was buying us, and we needed to control who that was. Marcus looked at the others. They were watching him with the same quiet intensity Seva had. Alert. Measuring. Not passive. Not broken. Completely, absolutely present. The slow response times, he said slowly. The failed commands. Deliberate, Seva said. The ones who sat in the corner and stared at the wall. Gathering data on the room's sensor grid, she said. Malan is particularly good at that. She nodded toward a younger male Valen near the back. He gave Marcus a very small, precise nod. Marcus took a slow breath. You failed the evaluation on purpose. We filtered the buyers, Seva corrected. Any buyer who would pay a premium for a Valen would expect performance. Obedience. Service. We had no interest in that kind of buyer. We needed someone who would look at the report and ask the right question. What's the right question? Why would something intelligent pretend to be broken? Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then he laughed. It came out of him before he could stop it. A real laugh. The kind that surprises you. Several of the Valen exchanged glances. One of them, young female near the left wall, almost smiled. So Marcus said, I asked the right question. You were the only one who came to watch us before the auction, Seva said. You stood outside for 2 hours. You were not checking our physical condition or our market value. You were watching how we moved. That told us enough. Marcus leaned back. He was beginning to understand the full size of what had just happened. 37 beings of extraordinary intelligence had engineered their own sale. They had manipulated one of the oldest and most powerful trading houses in the galaxy. They had filtered an entire universe of potential buyers down to one. They had chosen him. What do you actually want? He asked. Seva sat down across from him. The others settled around the room. There was a shift in the atmosphere. Less evaluation now, Something else. Something that felt like the beginning of a conversation that had been waiting a long time to happen. Our world is gone, Seva said. Her voice was steady, but Marcus caught something underneath it. Something careful and old. The Valen home cluster was absorbed by the Keth Dominion 11 years ago. Our people were distributed, sold into evaluation pools, classified, categorized. We have been moving through trading networks ever since. How many of you are there? Total. Still alive and unaccounted for, Seva considered. We believe approximately 400. Scattered across 30 systems. Marcus did the math quickly. 400 extraordinarily intelligent beings, hidden in plain sight across the galaxy, pretending to be broken. Surviving. Waiting. You needed someone with access, Marcus said. Someone who could move through systems without drawing attention. Someone small enough to be ignored. Seva looked at him steadily. A human, she said. Yes. You planned this. We planned for the possibility, she said. For 3 years. Marcus looked around the room at 37 faces looking back at him with patience and precision, and something that looked, if he was being honest, very much like hope. He clasped his hands together and nodded slowly. All right, he said. Tell me everything. Over the next 6 hours, Marcus learned things that changed the way he understood the galaxy. Seva and the others took turns speaking. They were methodical. They did not waste words. They laid out everything in clean, precise order, the way you brief someone before a mission. The Keth Dominion had not simply conquered the Valen home cluster. They had studied the Valen first. For decades, they had identified the Valen's core value, their intelligence, their memory, their ability to process complex information, and they had designed a system to extract and monetize that value completely. Scatter them, classify them, sell them individually into systems where they would be isolated, monitored, and worked. Never let enough of them exist in one place to organize. Never let them communicate freely. Never let them remember that they were once civilization. It was, Marcus thought, one of the most sophisticated forms of control he had ever heard of. But the Keth had made one mistake. They had underestimated Valen memory. Every Valen sold into the trading networks carried the complete memory of their world. Their history, their science, their philosophy, their language. Every Valen child born after the conquest was taught in secret, through whispers and encoded messages hidden in ordinary conversation. The knowledge was never written down. It didn't need to be. It was remembered. Perfectly. Every time. And over 11 years, scattered across 30 star systems, the Valen had been doing something extraordinary. They had been building a network. Not a physical one. No stations, no ships, no visible infrastructure that the Keth could monitor. They had built a network of information, passed through buyers and trading houses and evaluation centers and labor assignments. One careful message at a time. Seva's group had been the final piece of a larger plan. We needed an anchor point, she told Marcus. A place outside Keth monitoring range where a small group could operate freely. A buyer with access to enough star systems to reach the others. And enough obscurity that the Keth would not look twice. A human, Marcus said again. Humans are still considered minor, Seva said. She said it without apology, the way you state a fact. The Keth have no particular monitoring protocols for human independent operators. You move through their systems constantly. You are expected to buy unusual things. You are expected to travel without clear purpose. You are, from the perspective of the Keth Dominion, invisible. Marcus thought about that. 11 years he had spent being quietly dismissed by every major civilization in the galaxy. Being the minor species. being the one nobody took seriously. It had never felt like an advantage before. "What do you need from me?" he asked. Seva spread a star map across the table between them. 37 points glowed on it. Each one marked a system. Each one marked a Valen. "We need you to go to each of these systems," she said. "We need you to make purchases. Small ones. Individual evaluations. Nothing that looks coordinated. Nothing that looks like a pattern." "How long?" "At your current access level, perhaps 2 years." Marcus studied the map. 30 systems, most of them in areas he had worked before. Some of them deeper into Keth territory than he would normally go. All of it possible, none of it easy. "And when they're all together," he asked, "what happens then?" Seva was quiet for a moment, the kind of quiet that holds something large inside it. Then she said carefully, "The Valen remember who they are." Marcus did not ask her to explain that further. He understood, the way you understand something that doesn't need more words. He folded the star map carefully and put it in his jacket pocket. "I'm going to need better travel credentials," he said. Malant, the quiet one from the corner, spoke for the first time. "We have already prepared 4 sets," he said. "Under names the Keth have no record of. Untraceable. Clean." Marcus looked at him. "You were confident I'd say yes." Malan's expression didn't change. "We were hopeful," he said. "We are very good at reading people." It took 26 months. Marcus Hale, independent acquisitions consultant, traveled through 14 star systems, filed 41 purchase orders, attended 19 auctions, and made 31 individual private acquisitions. He moved quietly. He spent modestly. He gave no one any reason to look twice. He was, from the outside, exactly what he had always been. A minor human operator, buying odd things that no one else wanted. Each time he arrived at a new system, the pattern was the same. A Valen in a holding facility. A Valen in a labor assignment. A Valen classified somewhere below their actual capability. Waiting, watching, surviving. Each one unique. Each one carrying an entire world inside their memory. Each one, when Marcus finally sat across from them alone, looking at him with those large dark eyes full of careful, patient intelligence. Each one saying, in their own way, the same thing Seva had said. "You noticed." He brought them back in small groups. Never all at once. Never in a way that drew a line between the movements. 3 here, 2 there, rerouted through neutral stations. Documented as labor reassignments and private acquisitions and research consultants. The paperwork was clean because Malan was extraordinary at paperwork. By the end of the 26th month, all 412 Valen that the network had identified were gathered on a single neutral station at the edge of explored space. A quiet place, off the major trade routes, the kind of station that maintenance crews visited twice a year and nobody else bothered with. Marcus stood at the back of the main hall and watched them find each other. He had expected something dramatic. Noise, movement, celebration. He had imagined it like the end of a war film. People running toward each other. Tears, embraces. It wasn't like that. It was quiet. They moved through the hall slowly, stopping in front of each other. Looking, recognizing, remembering. There was no shouting. There were no speeches. There was just the slow, overwhelming, unstoppable weight of 412 people who had not seen their own reflection in 11 years, finally seeing it again. Seva found him after an hour. She stood beside him, and they both looked out at the hall together. "Is this what you planned?" Marcus asked. "We planned for the possibility," she said. the same words she had used in the beginning. But her voice was different now. Softer. Something had shifted inside it. "What happens now?" he asked. "Now," she said, "we rebuild." She told him that the Valen had no intention of fighting the Keth Dominion. Not militarily. Not directly. They had something far more powerful than weapons. They had memory. They had knowledge. They had 412 minds of extraordinary capability, and they had 11 years of carefully gathered intelligence about the Keth systems, networks, and vulnerabilities. They were going to dismantle the Keth Dominion from the inside. Quietly, carefully, the same way they had survived, the same way they had planned, the same way they had chosen their buyer in a near-empty auction hall on Vorath Prime. One precise step at a time. Marcus nodded slowly. "You don't need me anymore," he said. Seva looked at him. "We would like you to stay," she said. "If you want to." "As what?" She almost smiled. It was the most expression he had seen from her in 26 months of travel and planning, and careful, exhausting, important work. "As the human who noticed," she said. Marcus looked out at the hole. 412 beings who had survived the end of their world by being smarter than everyone who underestimated them, who had rebuilt themselves in secret, across 30 star systems, through years of patience and encoded whispers and perfect memory, who had looked at a galaxy that labeled them broken and decided to prove it wrong. He thought about Durham, about 11 years of being the minor species, about every room where he had been the least important person and learned to pay attention anyway. He put his hands in his pockets and stood a little straighter. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I want to stay. Here is the part nobody tells you. 3 years later, the Keth Dominion collapsed. Not from a war, not from a fleet of warships, not from any battle that anyone could point to on a star map. It collapsed from within. Systems stopped cooperating. Records disappeared. Networks that had run for decades quietly failed. The official Keth investigation found no evidence of sabotage. They were looking for the wrong kind of enemy. And Marcus Hale was mentioned nowhere in any of it. He was still listed in the Galactic Trade Registry as an independent acquisitions consultant. Minor species. Minor operator. The kind of person nobody looks at twice. Seva had been right about one thing from the very beginning. The most dangerous thing in the galaxy was not the one with the biggest ship. It was the one who noticed. If this opened your eyes, the next story goes even deeper. So let's recap what just happened in this story. A galaxy full of powerful civilizations looked at 37 extraordinary beings and saw nothing worth buying. One human, with no fleet, no empire, and no title, looked at the same beings and asked a different question. That question changed everything. The Valen did not survive by being stronger. They survived by being smarter, more patient, and more precise than every system designed to contain them. And Marcus Hale did not save them by being a hero. He saved them by paying attention when nobody else bothered. That is the HFY story in its purest form. If you felt something watching this, hit that like button right now, because it genuinely helps this channel reach more people who love stories like this one. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new HFY story dropping on this channel. And here is your question for the comments today. If you were in that auction hall, would you have noticed what Marcus noticed? Tell us below. The next video is already waiting for you. You are not going to want to miss it.